Adam Worrell and Richard Pickett from Wilmot Dixon, here to talk about future sustainable construction. So welcome to you both. You can unmute yourselves and share your presentation.
Morning, you should be able to see it now.
Over. So thank you very much for giving up your time to join us this morning.
Oh, thank you for the invite.
Thanks, Team Chella. And I'll kick off then. Adam Worrell, Director for Wilmot Dixon, luckily for once in the office, which is quite nice, in Dartford. So how do I follow Mr. Metcalfe? I haven't got enough puns, I don't think. So Kermit's not coming into our slides at all, but we'll give it a go. I guess that when I was talking in the breakout room, it seems like quite a heavy subject for this time in the morning, but we'll crack on and just talk about a little bit about our views on building a more sustainable construction industry. What we're seeing is a big challenge in this in the coming years. The timing's pretty good for us. We've just launched our 2030 sustainability strategy. And this is not a WD platform. This is just giving a few ideas on the challenges we're seeing in the industry, but also some of the things that I think we can do about it, because it just seems like a massive thing to deal with. So if I could just give a little bit of a scene setting, and Richard can try and play the first video.
Are you ready?
Yeah, go for it. I'll go mute.
I'm going to press the button now.
Oh, that silenced the room. Apologies for that video. We're trying to, it is an impactful video. It's a bit of a trailer, but from our point of view, we realise now it is now or never that we need to make a real positive impact on this. Science tells us that we've got about 10 years really to try and get hold of this, especially at the moment with all the budgetary and economic challenges we've got. It's just another thing that sort of weighs down on us, I think. But the fact is that we've got issues with climate change. The other piece that really, really hits home with me is about the inequality in society. So for me, it's a two-pronged thing that we really need to be mindful of. And it's a big challenge, and we've really got to make a difference. This year, we've seen some massive challenges, and we still don't know what that all means. And with Brexit looming as well, as Andrew sort of touched on then with Operation Stack or whatever it's called these days, we've just got some real challenges ahead of us. And personally, the thing that I find the most difficult on the sustainability agenda is just the amount of stuff that's being talked about, and maybe a little bit of how numb we come to all the news and what's going on out there and how you can actually make a positive impact. But I think we can. But sometimes we just feel those issues are too big, or we're too remote from it. You know, it's a big issue. The construction industry is a real high impact industry, I think, and we found that small changes do have massive ripple effects. The challenge now is that we probably need to make some bigger changes and be a little bit braver with everything else that's going on at the moment. It's a real challenge. But again, I think the industry that we work on is one that sees problems and challenges and knocks them over. So I think the big challenge out there to all of us is how we can make the first steps in improving this. Just as one example, I think the UK construction industry creates 50,000 tonnes of plastic just from packaging alone. Now, I know we're under extreme economic pressure, but just finding a better way of doing that and less of it is a step in the right direction. From my point of view, you can't do this on your own. I think there's got to be a collective effort. It's with clients, customers, supply chain, communities, everyone we touch and feel in our area and in our industry. And from my point of view, this is about speed. this for us is, as a business, we've got to do something more about it now, and we've got to put sustainability at front and centre of our business and our decision making. And I think what comes with that is some potential opportunity. You know, we've seen people thrive in the current climate. A lot of people are struggling, but if we've got to really improve our industry, our housing stock, our communities, then it's going to be a key growth market in the sector for the next 10 years. Lots of risk in it, I understand that, but again, as I said, lots of opportunity. And for me, the question is, why not? Why not make this a real thought-provoking time for yourselves and in your own business? So I'm going to pass over to Mr. Pickett now, who's head of legacy. I've brought him along in case there's any challenging questions, basically. And hopefully he can touch on a few real tangible things we found in our construction industry and our offices and what we've done out on the ground to make a positive step. So pass over to Richard.
Thanks, Adam. Good morning, everybody. And again, thank you very much for the invitation to speak. So as Adam has alluded to, I head up the legacy team at Wilmot Dixon. A little bit of a Wilmot Dixonism using the word legacy, but everything we do leaves a legacy. But I tend to focus on sustainability, environment, and one of a very critical subject, which is social value and social impact within the community. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things: building lives and brilliant buildings. But you know, when it comes to building lives of local people and constructing brilliant buildings for Kent, it's critical we embark, as Adam's alluded to on this decisive decade. Building lives in Kent must focus on the social impact we have on people, businesses, and the community of Kent. Over the next 10 years, there are three key areas that I see that we need to consider on the sustainability journey. It's people, business, and community. And as an industry, we need to leave a legacy that reaches beyond just the walls of the buildings that we're constructing and lasts a long time after the hoardings have gone down. The industry has already achieved great outcomes, but now we need to strive forward, not just because it's the right thing to do, but it helps us all as businesses and helps the communities in which we're working as well. Some communities across Kent continue to face the unique challenges. Indicators of life satisfaction, happiness, and anxiety across the UK has got worse, and we haven't yet really looked at the impacts of COVID yet. But understanding the communities we want to support is critical. But we need to also redefine who the community is. It just isn't those people out there. It is made up of employers, it's made up of customers, it's made up of our supply chain, and made up of both individuals and of other businesses. So what do we need to do? True social impact only happens when our solution addresses a real need. So let's be clear what that real need is. And finally, I think we need to be brave and transparent about what impact we have, which is related to our outputs, so that we can learn and improve. These three steps are logical, but deceivably simple to understand, but sometimes can be difficult to achieve. So what can we do different? I think critically we need to listen closely to our customers, share with them our views and our challenges in the communities, and work to deliver those meaningful outcomes. As an industry, we must secure purpose at the heart of our business while supporting other businesses to prosper. The businesses we support may well be part of our supply chain, but they may be social enterprises and charities. And at Wilmot Dixon, we see supporting the third sector and those as real important ways of unlocking hard to reach individuals and organisations when we look at social enterprises and charities. They even may be our customers, but focus on these areas in terms of driving bigger things. We need to be constantly learn and improve so that the challenges themselves deliver social value and relate to the decisions that we make, but also how we support our own people on everything that we procure. The UK continues to have one of the highest levels of income equality in the world. As alluded to here, Kent has a high proportion of young people who are unemployed. So many attending today will already be trying to support that journey, but it's important that we also inspire the next generation and support those hard to reach individuals. But whilst young people are important, we must focus on them. If the community says we need to support long-term unemployed or career changes, then perhaps we need to focus on those areas as well. So in building lives across Kent, the social impact focus must be on people, business and community to ensure that we provide that prosperous future. When it comes to brilliant buildings, constructing and refurbishing fit for the current generations must be really important. It must be in terms of their energy use, their carbon emissions, and very much the resilience to the hotter and wetter future climates which are on their way. But also they need to be healthy and comfortable environments. And as an industry, we need to look at how we deliver those buildings moving forward. I see, looking ahead, the construction industry needs to look at 4 key ambitions between now and 2030 and 2040. And by 2030, all buildings and major refurbishments need to achieve net zero operational carbon. They must also be future climate ready, optimizing, as I mentioned, the health and the well-being of the people that live or work within those buildings. And certainly by 2040, if we're going to go on this journey to achieve, all buildings and major refurbishments must deliver a net zero embodied carbon, which is going to be a massive challenge. And supply chains must also be operationally net zero. The last 2 ambitions that I mentioned about 2040 are going to be the challenging ones, because we're going to be looking at construction materials and supply chain processes to drive that carbon and those emissions out. But achieving a net zero balance carbon for our buildings is all about balance. We have to make sure that the balance and the energy we use to run buildings is supplied with renewable energy, either on site or from off-site sources. The result of the balance is a net zero emissions of carbon. So this means for a net zero project we build for our customers, there is no further carbon emissions as a result of delivering the building and the customer working for it. So what does that mean for us as a construction industry when we design and build a net zero carbon building? Well, there's 4 sort of critical stages. Step 1 is about reducing the energy from heating, lighting and other equipment in the building. That's critical for 2 reasons. Reducing the energy means reduced energy bills for our customers, less energy to supply from renewable sources, and delivering more projects to low energy buildings like Passive House will be key for us to focus here. Now, Passive House is an efficient design solution which encapsulates all these design concepts to deliver a very efficient low energy building, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Step 2 really is assessing the embodied carbon associated with concrete, steel and cladding and other materials. But there are digital tools out there across the industry where we can evaluate and reduce the embodied carbon and challenge with alternative designs, materials and processes. And step 3 means supplying the remaining energy to the site from renewable generation or from the grid. And step 4, critically to achieving the net zero problem, is to measure and verify both the energy and energy supply once a building is in use to make sure that our design intent matches how the building really performs. And we use a process called energy synergy in order to drive that net zero journey. The principal thing, the drive to close the performance gap between design performance and actual performance is critical in ensuring we achieve the net zero operational carbon ambition. If we can't understand why a building operates, then we cannot put a robust plan in place to eliminate the carbon emissions. Future climate, we can't just create buildings that are brilliant in carbon terms. They also have to be designed for future climates and the changes in the climate that are coming in terms of it being hotter and wetter, and maintaining their great places to use. So as an industry, we must involve our design standards for projects and standardized products and platforms that prevent future overheating in homes and offices and schools, and certainly ones which are resilient to flooding and weather impacts to achieve the best possible outcomes. And those outcomes need to ensure that they must be comfortable and well ventilated and productive environments. So The challenge now for the construction industry is to work with our customers and supply chain partners to achieve these brilliant buildings within the timescales, and we've got 10 years. I referred earlier to Passive House. Passive House places what I've described at the centre of design and delivery. We recently handed over a building to the London Borough of Sutton. The London Borough of Sutton decided to deliver a Passive House school. This demanded attention to detail at all design stages and ensuring that the Passive House design requirements would adhere to. But during construction, the attention to detail ensured an airtight structure, which was extremely important. So we handed this over to the customer last year. I'm going to finish this with a little video about Passive House, which just tells you a little bit more about the journey that we went on. Thank you very much for your time.
In the last 18 months, I think people have begun to wake up to the full extent of accelerating climate change. There's no debate about the fact it's happening. Now the debate is how bad is it going to be, and what do we need to do to stop it getting even worse. And that debate is now fully engaged in every country in the world. Some of the latest projections from the scientific advisors advising governments are pretty grim. They don't make for easy reading. We're going to see a lot of dislocation, a lot of damage done to people's lives, rising sea levels, extreme weather, firestorms, the lot. I mean, it's not a pretty picture, and we can't stop some of that. It's too late. But what we can do is to stop that all getting worse and worse, to stop what they call runaway climate change. Not only do we have to have that discussion now, we have to work out plans of action to be delivered in the next 10 to 15 years. That's the scale of the challenge. I think everybody's just waking up to the reality of what zero carbon for the built environment looks like. Because we've talked about for many, many years, but we've never really properly, the industry has never properly got hold of the challenge of what it would be to have a zero carbon built environment in an advanced industrial economy like the UK.
Passive House is a standard which is got two key aspects at its heart. One of it is about building really robust low energy buildings, and the other part is creating really comfortable indoor environments. Passive House has to be part of the solution. This is the only way that we're going to be able to get our energy consumption down to what we need it to be. And seeing something like this is a really positive and heartwarming example of showing that it really can be done.
The great thing about a Passive House school is efficiency. Efficiency in the use of materials, in the use of energy, efficiency in construction techniques. So the reason that why Passive House is so brilliant is it is without a doubt the most demanding, rigorous way of delivering energy efficient buildings anywhere in the world today.
In terms of building for the future, I think Passive House is really key because it addresses the performance gap between what people thought they were designing and getting, but in reality they were finding buildings weren't achieving the energy performance that was supposedly being designed to. Passive House, through the kind of rigour and quality control through construction, means that you eliminate that performance gap, and what you design is what you get at the end in terms of operational energy use. And we've seen that through the various primary schools that we've completed to date and monitored after use, that they are performing as expected, which is great because it means vastly lower energy bills for schools.
Early on in the project, we went to visit another Passive House school, and what struck me that early on was the nature of the materials used, the ambience of the school, and actually that began to influence my thinking of how we develop as a school community and the policies we have in place. During the build phase, we really focused on what I think was a unique opportunity, which was designing a school from the ground up, which at its heart had sustainability.
I think there's a real myth around the cost of a Passive House building. Obviously there are specialist components that you need to deliver a Passive House, but that is offset by generally a simplified design, so you have less building envelope, which therefore cost less. Simplified building services, so things like the boilers, where previously you might have expected a very big commercial boiler. You can heat a building of this scale with a very small boiler and maybe one backup. So where you have extra costs, you also have reduced cost.
It's hugely inspiring to see a company such as Wilmot Dixon really go for it. They really got that this was about process and quality and ensuring that they got it right every single time.
Sutton have delivered a school which has at its heart and within the very fabric of its building, the values of sustainability and a focus on the environment. And I think what we look to do as a school, Harris Academy Sutton here, is then to take that message to the students, and obviously the students are the next generation of the borough's inhabitants, and then they will grow and develop that over the generations to come.
Brilliant, thanks Richie. It does seem a little bit of Wilmot Dixon propaganda. Our signs keeps coming up at the end of those things. I guess that's just one example of what we're finding out in the marketplace of where you can really make a difference, but all pieces of the puzzle have got to come together for that to happen. Comments there about how it's maybe a little bit more expensive, I don't think are proven. And when you actually look at the energy use of that building, they're 80% less use of energy. So I think it's a bit of a myth in terms of how much these buildings cost. And I think it's a real opportunity that we could all sort of look at a little bit more. So thanks for watching that. Coming on to Kent really and what we've looked at, you can see a few stats there that we've looked at. The Kent and Medway have both signed the climate emergency in 2019. And this is some of the targets or some of the facts and figures that are coming through. Currently 54% total fuel consumption from gas and electric. And again, we all probably feel it at home, energy prices are rising. Need to use renewable energy and use buildings to create energy. There's some real innovative companies out there who can help with this, truly built and operating at net zero carbon. You look at the targets there for houses, there could be off the back of COVID, people moving out of London and moving back into Kent. The challenge there on not only new houses, but also the old stock that really do not perform very well at all. So how do you make something that's future-proof is just key. And these net zero carbon or taking it to the next level for Passive House really gives you an opportunity to do that. There's been 4.5% fall in carbon emissions in transport, a great start. We've just got to keep doing more. And again, the overall big ticket item of net zero carbon emission, it seems a long way off, but it will come around very quickly. And we actually believe that needs to be brought forward just to try and slow down climate change impacts. So a few impacts, a few items that we've looked at. The Passive House we've talked about. Probably an unintended consequence of COVID is just the amount of time people have saved by not having to travel. That has been self-imposed, but ultimately we've got to look for a balance. I talked about it in the morning chat room. People have probably had enough of sitting at home all day, every day. So trying to find a balance between that and working and coming together as a team is key. Not only to try and save emissions and save time, but also look for a healthy work environment and to really limit the concern on health issues and mental health issues going forward. The performance gap, this is, if I'm being honest, I'll put our hand up as an industry. I think it's pretty embarrassing. What we sell to our customers of how buildings are going to perform to what we actually produce for them is pretty poor. It's the white elephant in the construction industry, I believe, and we've just got to get a lot better at it. How we commit to the quality and energy uses. And again, we see this as a potential brave step that we maybe say will guarantee your energy bills for X amount of years after a building is open. It's a real bad part of our industry that I think we all need to concentrate on. And finally, for me, about the inequality, find out what the communities need around your projects, listen to them, and actually then go and do something about it. Don't just make up what you think is right for them. Really look, listen and talk to them and find out what they really need. So that's kind of the end. If you want to flick on one slide, Rich. For me, the takeaway points, look, there's loads of messaging. We've probably given too much out this morning, gauging what was going on before. But there's 3 takeaways for me. It's a huge challenge that we face, but we've got a high impact industry and we can make a big difference. For me, the thoughts on sustainability cannot be a bolt-on. You've got to look at them from day one of every project and day one of every relationship. It can't be an afterthought. You've missed the boat if you do that. And the biggest one for me is people need to be taking both personally and business-wise immediate and brave steps to make things happen. In my eyes, we can't be spectators in this. So I love the opportunity to have this talk. Apologies, it's a bit heavy for 8 o'clock in the morning. But yeah, that's us, and happy to sort of take any questions depending on what the presidential team Cella timing. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. That is really, really good. There are a couple of questions in the chat room, but it'd be more. There's just a couple that are more relevant. I thought, or somebody's asked this: is the government helping with this in any way, or is it all private finance?
Well, I'll give an overview, and then I don't know if Richie's got any stats. One of the biggest concerns we've got is there's just no backup to the promises made, and actually the regulations are loosening up rather than tightening up from central government. Policymakers are not doing enough to make it law. So at the moment, everyone's trying to drag their own ideas into the forefront, and it's a real challenge. But that's a high overview. I don't know if Richie's got any stats on it.
Well, just building on what you're saying.
There, Richard.
Sorry.
Just being put on the spot there. If you just got
thrown under the bus,
we
call it a Wilmot. Thrown under the bus, we call it a Wilmot Dixon. No. All seriousness. In terms of assistance from the government, they're not going to be bringing out acres of cash to start building net zero buildings. I think where this really has to start is the way we approach construction and the journey we've been on before, and dare I say many of us will have worked with the BREEAM journey. We get halfway through designing a building and somebody says, oh, we want to do BREEAM, and this is the same with net zero. We've got to go right the way back to the very start of everything we select and how we design this building. And this is where Passive House comes in a big way, in the fact that if you get it right from the start, you can, I'm not saying it's not going to push the cost up, but if we get it right at the start, we can minimize any increases in cost. All the government are doing, to sort of run back to the government question, is bringing in more legislation. They put a flag in that 2050 is the net zero target. So buildings by 2030 that we're constructing need to be net zero, and then by 2040 we need to get the embodied carbon out of what we're building. So the only help they're putting in is legislation. But it's a bit like the car.
That might not be true, Richard. Brian's made a comment about some news yesterday, so we're behind the curve, mate. I don't know if Brian's...
All right, there you go.
There's 3 billion.
Cheryl thought that was £38.
Yeah, I see that quite correctly there. I thought that was £38. Sorry about that.
Will Boris come on later and just confirm that's right?
Yeah,
though?
we've got him on in the lunchtime lounge. Everyone come back, lunchtime lounge. Boris is coming to talk.
Thank you to Brian. Thank you to Brian. We'll do a little bit of digging for that. To be fair, I probably didn't see that because I was prepping for today.
No, thank you guys. That's brilliant and really impactful, thoughtful stuff there. And it's great work that you're doing there. So well done to you, and feel free to big yourselves up. I think it's great stuff that you're doing and very thought provoking. If we did have a number of questions, but you have kind of addressed a number of those in your presentation, and we are conscious of time. So if we could just, in the usual manner, show our appreciation with a bit of a virtual clap for Adam and Richard, that would be appreciated, and thank you both so much for giving up your time to join us today.